So there's a misconception that if you're single, you are incomplete, perhaps damaged, salvaged, and you won't be happy until you find your one. And that is not true. That is bullshit. It is a message that has been fed to us by media and advertising. The truth is, when you're single, you have the richest soil for growth. That's why I created this podcast. And unlike other podcasts, this one is host-driven, not guest-driven. That means I will be rotating health and wellness experts 3 times a week to give you the giant box of wellness crayons, not just the primary colors, so you can start building a meaningful life. It's time to give singlehood a cape. Today's host is someone I go way back with. His name is Sean Cardinalli. Sounds like a baseball player. He's a coach, writer, and activist who returned to coaching on sex and love addiction at the outset of the pandemic after a 4-year hiatus. He speaks the language, and his coaching style tends to lean toward 12-step recovery, which saved his own life and livelihood 14 years ago. He's also very transparent. Sean earned his local certification through Linda Bark's holistic coaching methodology and is pursuing his ICF certification and a degree in social work. So beyond sex and love addiction, Sean's practice focuses on intimacy, relationships, divorce, dating, and the creative process. Enjoy Sean Cardinalli.
Hi, everyone. It's Sean Cardinalli, sex and love addiction coach. And I'm here one more time, and we're going to keep doing this because we like hearing ourselves talk. No, because Alan Herring III and I are good old friends who have a lot of conversations about how to do relationships with ourselves and with others more healthily. Alan and I go back almost 15 years now, and both came through therapy and 12-step programs in sex and love addiction recovery. And he brought a topic: how do we set boundaries, we versus us, and sort of other concepts about doing exactly that in relationships. And I was just going to set the tone a little bit and then hand it right over to you, Alan, because for you and me and people like us or have come through recovery like us, you know that as an addict, especially behavioral addiction, much less substance, but behavioral in our case, there are no fucking boundaries.
Right.
We blew through boundaries in active addiction all the fucking time. That's like the name of the game. Let me disappoint myself, my friends, my colleagues, my kids, my partner, whatever, by not adhering to like societal norms, right? Keeping any boundaries or contracts or anything with anyone. Like, fuck it, just nuke all the interpersonal relationships. And so I think we have been doing the work and living a different livelihood and lifestyle that then has fomented and built and helped us build better boundaries in relationships. First, I think you would agree with ourselves, which is part of why this is partnered into Single on Purpose, but also with others, so that once we have this good foundation with ourselves, we can go out and be with someone, but also not lose ourselves, not get enmeshed, and have healthy boundaries. Where do you want to start with this, my man?
It's interesting because I was thinking about one of our first podcasts,
It's our third.
I know. It's our third. Like, one of our first. But I was thinking about like a comment that I said in there where it was like talking about, my most recent ex and I, and how like I lost myself in that relationship, became a we instead of like an us. And I think of a lot of relationships of friends that I've known over the years who go through that period of we do this, we do that. And you lose your sense of self there. And I think that, boundaries help us try and maintain that us as opposed to a we. And so I've been thinking about what is it that, like, for me, tipped it over into we, and fear, fear of being alone, fear of, thinking, oh, this is going to be the last chance at a relationship. So accepting things that I don't think I should have accepted.
Why did you think it was a last chance? Where does that fear? Is it age? I mean, I know we're not Golden Girls, but we're not
well,
Wonder Twins anymore either.
That's true. But, in the gay community, a girlfriend said, "Oh, you're at the daddy phase." I said, "Bitch, my money's mine. I ain't paying for anybody. It's mine."
Oh, like a sugar daddy.
Like a sugar daddy.
Not like a father-son, but like a partner where you're the bank.
They do that father-son thing too. So it's all there. It's all that. It's all enmeshed. It's like, it's like you saying, "Hey, baby girl," that's a little bit on the enmeshed side too. That I'm sorry. That's no different. It's no different than, hey, how's my baby boy? It's no different. So
fucking fair.
I
stand corrected.
Yeah, it's there. But I don't mind sharing my finances, my life with another person, but I'm not going to care for the other person in the sense of like, you don't have to work and I'll take care of you.
Like a crutch. You're not going to be their crutch,
right?
Right. Yeah.
I'll support you.
Your little sidecar.
Right. I'll support you in your dreams. I'll support you, if you're sick, if you're healthy, but like, I'm not going to be giving you allowance money.
I love all the visuals. You got a book. This podcast might have a book. We can co-write it. Your name can be above mine because it's your idea. But I really like how you're. Now I'm understanding. Before we jumped on, I was like, where are you going to go with this we versus us? I knew the boundaries part, but I really like your definition of that. So like two individuals coming together is an us, whereas that Jerry Maguire, you complete me, is a we, which is just barf.
Yes.
And just, the shit that we have worked over a decade now to, it feels good until it doesn't. Right. And when you do want space or time or a fucking thought of your own or an action, then you're like, oh shit, we're like two octopuses, like all wrapped up now, enmeshed. And I also like how you're talking about how fear, and I also wrote insecurity kind of, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose him. I don't want to lose them. And so you're like, it's that anxious attachment.
Yes.
And so you're like, fuck it, we're a we. Like I have to always make these decisions in the realm of the we, right? I can't do something outside of that, or God forbid. Right. So there's a lot of fear there.
There's a lot of fear, and there's really not a genuine mechanism for supporting the other person in a we, because within the we, one is always like, I would say, more emotionally dominant than the other, or more emotionally vulnerable than the other. And because of that, there's not an equal balance of support, emotional support, or even like support of your dreams, support of your goals, support. It's just not equal.
That's fucking great. That reminds me of, so my little shortcut, my little personal definition of codependence is I'm doing the right thing for the wrong reason. I'm doing what seemingly healthy thing for a really unhealthy reason. And that's what you're saying reminds me of, because how can I get true support? It's almost like crying wolf. If I support or I ask for support as a means to then give succor to my insecurity and my codependence, then when I really fucking need it and say it doesn't come, or I don't know, there's some misunderstanding or some tension as a result of that, oh my God, that's going to spin me as the codependent, like into fucking outer space. Like, oh my God, the one time I asked, it's like, no, motherfucker, you cried wolf 18 times because you have no mind, life, identity outside of the we. And in this case, I can't or won't or don't want to like help, like whatever the reason is for the alpha partner or whatever you say, the dominant partner to be like, no, then it's really hard for that codependent, which is why, you got to ask for things in a genuine way and share insecurities, positives and negatives in a genuine way.
Right. That's it exactly. Because at one point I might have looked at it as like an alpha dominant, but to me, it's more of a, it's got the feelings more of like a narcissist, being, instead of like saying dominant, it's the narcissist saying me, right? And it's like, I helped you, I had an ex that never really pointed it out, but I was going through health issues and he stood by me and everything there. But then when it was things that I was like, hey, here's a story I wrote. Would you read it? Never read it.
Oh,
never read it.
And everybody, for the record, Alan is a fucking published author, writer, right. Short stories, poems, novels, etc., nonfiction as well, and a tech writer. So he's a fucking writer. So for your partner to not read your shit,
right. And so to me, that was like the level of, that's when I say there's a level of support, right? So to me, when we're going to set boundaries, those are to me, going forward, it's those are boundaries that I'm not going to let be crossed anymore, right? And I say that because I went out with this guy and it was his birthday, I got him a book, and then I made him a bag, decorated it, did decoupage on it and put it together so that it was an art piece, right?
Que faceta, decoupage. Now we have Spanish and French in the fucking podcast.
But it was out of genuine care, but also my own ego, right? That it's hey, I've done something, and he gets it, and he just kind of looks at it and sets it down, and then doesn't say anything. And so a couple days later, so we finished the date and everything like that, and a couple days later he's like, hey, could we go out? And I said, I'm gonna have to pass. And he said, why? And I said, because one thing I learned in my last relationship is if I share a part of myself that I really like, in this case, my artistic thing, and I'm giving that to you as a gift, and you just set it down without even acknowledging it, without even saying, hey, it's nice, it's pretty, whatever. I realized, which is weird. I said, I realized that you're not really interested in getting to know me. And that's fair, and that's fine. So I'm just going to let us go our separate ways before this gets any further. No,
this
I do
is more
like
recent then. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say, well,
this is in healthful sexuality and intimacy where you are setting boundaries better. Okay, so
and this is after my longest relationship. Yes.
Okay, with the one that I'm thinking of.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm not going to call out anybody right now, but so this was with a healthy sense of intimacy and boundaries and dating. And you presented this package because at first I was like, was this back in the day where you were codependent or still in addiction? But no, you offered, and you're open to whatever, expectations are, varied or muted or whatever, or you're just waiting to see, but you put in some effort.
Right.
And then it is very unusual for this person to then take it and literally say nothing. He really said nothing.
Nothing. Just took it and then set it down. Opened it, pulled out the book, and then put it back and then set it down. And I'm an avid reader, and so it wasn't even well, what's this book about? Why should I read it? Or, hey, you wrapped it beautifully or whatever. It was just so weird, but it was enough to say, for whatever reason, he could not be vulnerable with me.
How long into, so were you were dating, right? Because I don't think I've heard of you have another
no.
Boom.
Yeah, I would say dating. It was probably it was maybe 2 or 3 times, so it was still new enough, but it was you got to,
it's a nice first move.
Yeah, you get to know enough, you get to know that person in a short matter of time, right? Because that to me says something about who that person is. That says what and if you go in with a boundary and you say, hey, my boundaries are, I'm not going to let my creativity or my creative expression be stepped upon or just ignored, then at the first sign of it, at an early step, then you have to just recognize this person doesn't have the capacity to engage with you. Doesn't mean they're a bad person at all. It just means that they cannot do it. So if you continue, it's like you're pushing a rock up the hill, Sisyphus, expecting this person to change, and they're never going to change.
And the rock keeps rolling right over your fucking face.
Right over you, right? That's what happens.
That's
and
great.
So, you keep doing it thinking, oh, this person is eventually going to change. They're eventually going to see what I did and acknowledge it. No. How many times do you have to experience it before you realize that that person is incapable of doing it? It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means they cannot do it.
And not right for you in that scenario. And
exactly.
Maybe they're for someone else who's as stoic, or I don't know. That seems a little stunted emotionally for an adult, especially if it was someone like close to our age, or at least even within 10 years of our age. And what I like what you're sharing is you put out what I love to talk about. So many of these classes or these one-on-one sessions, we're talking about the unhealthy. But I always try to remember, and these are the things that we can do, right? In terms of the 12-step that you and I came up through, we can talk about the inner circle stuff, the stuff that's really unhealthy. We're talking about the outer circle stuff, which is all the other things you can do. So I like to rely on that. It's not just all defense, it's offense. We are proactive in our healthy sexuality and intimacy and relationships. And what you did was you took a healthy risk and you put yourself pretty far out there. I mean, that you put some effort into this, and it could be but for someone to not acknowledge it at all, I would have even given you some, not some props, but I would have even been like, man, you could maybe even try one more time. But for him to not say anything,
right?
If it was a little dismissive, but then whatever, then I would have been like, okay, maybe next time, see how he acts, see how I act, see if there's another I don't know, exchange that ever happens like that similar again coming up. There's an opportunity to. But on the other hand, that's such a stark, clear, at least I was going to say unhealthy, but at least not for you or for me if I were in the same instance, to be like, did you not just see what I gave?
Right.
So that's interesting. I got to watch. I just dropped the N-word. Sorry. It's two black men talking, everybody. It's okay. Calm down. I will be careful though with the racial epithets. It just flew out of my face right now. I totally whoops. So I like how that was a healthy risk.
Yes.
I mean, you invested early, but why the fuck not? I mean, it's not like, first time meeting, but it's still, a bit about each other. And I presume he knew you're a writer, knew what you're about a little bit. And then you give this gift.
Right.
What was the gift for? Was it his birthday? Was it Valentine's Day?
It was his birthday. So at the same time, it's one of those that it's like, hey, I'm just going to stay and just enjoy it. Right. Because it's like, I'm going to stay because, you kind of think about it. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that person is doesn't know how to handle vulnerability. Right. So somebody's being very vulnerable with them. They don't know how to handle it. But again, like you said, when you reach a certain age, you have to recognize if you can't handle vulnerability or not. You have to be mature enough to know whether or not this is going to be a problem for you. And if it's going to be a problem for you, you have to go and fix it, right? That's why there's therapy, there's life coaching, there's all of these other tools to go and help you get over what that is. So to me, you shouldn't be after a certain age, still rehashing and fighting the same demons you were fighting when you were in your 20s.
Now, to be fair, we've seen men and women in the rooms and in therapy that are God, dude. I'm almost 50, so are you, punk. But no.
I'm sorry. Say that with my mouth full. You say that with my mouth full so that I can't.
I was waiting for you to take a drink to
take a drink. I'm like, oh.
See, it's a sucker punch. I sucker punched you on the podcast. But no, I mean, to be fair, I'm almost 50. You just turned 49, but we see people all the time, 60, 65, 70. And they're having this revelation that, oh my God, I've lived
right,
90, the first 80% of my life,
right,
unhealthy, as an addict, as a codependent, as like a serial cheater, like whatever it is. But at least they got into the rooms.
yes,
But I hear you. So I'm not even saying you're sounding judgmental. I totally agree with you. I mean, and since we're talking about being single, and then once we're good in our singlehood, going out there and more healthily dating and partnering, and exploring, and like we said in our first podcast, practicing, that it's okay to have standards,
right,
boundaries, an idea of what you would like. And so something, again, like I say, if it's that stark, you're like, that's a red flag.
right,
And I'm sorry that gets overused a lot these days now, but it really kind of is.
right.
And I might have been like, what was that? And just been directly confrontational. Right. But then on the other hand, when he reached back out again, you were like, so did you turn down a follow-up date? Is that what happened?
Yes.
And you were like, yeah,
yes.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah,
that was the end of the dating.
Yeah.
Good for you.
You know,
good for you. Fuck that.
Well, to me, that's, well, like we were talking about practice before, but that to me is how you have to honor your own boundaries, right? So like you have to be able to trust yourself to know, even if you're going to make a mistake, even if you make a mistake with it, you still have to trust yourself to respect and honor your boundaries. And if you make a mistake and the other person proves, something proves that it was wrong, then you have to be big enough a person to say, I was wrong. And
fair.
But that's where,
all fair.
That's what clear communication is, and in a I don't think that there's honest communication between all parties.
Okay. I'm going to say, dude, I love this topic. When we first started recording, I was like, you're going to have to help me with where we're going to go with this. But, one, it's you and me and we're some loquacious loudmouth motherfuckers. But two, this really is rich because it reminds me of what I often say about rubber hits the road, right? We go to the meetings, we go to therapy, we talk it out with sponsors, therapists, shaman, we get the Reiki, we get the massage, whatever our self-care is. And then in that moment, it's like, let me make the healthy decision. And that's the tough part. That's where the rubber hits the road, where you take everything out of conceptualizing and you apply, in our case, the recovery, or just whatever the person's sense of, right? You don't have to be an addict, but I've learned new things now. I have new tools and they help me date more healthily. And I'm going to make this decision because this doesn't seem right to me.
Well, and that's it. And, it's a challenge because, I'm thinking of like, previous relationships and just how to balance, because that, like we and us, I think that there's like us allows for me time, right? Where do I have me time in there? And how do you respect another person's like alone time, their me time, and not feel neglected, at the same time not feel resentful if that person is saying, hey, you're not giving me enough time.
Right. Well, Alan, that was a very nice segue.
Hey, did you like that?
That was great. To me, hijacking part of the conversation now with, I just fucking did this today, actually. My girlfriend and I we go to this cheap like breakfast place. Like we'll go to the fancy stuff. We'll go to the Grove. Saturday I went to the Grove. She met the family for the first time. It was a big milestone.
Congrats.
Went pretty well. And then this morning was different. It was just like, let's just go, let's go to Village Inn. I'm like, who cares? With all the families and the noise and the this and that. And, it's cheap and it's fun. I dig it. We dig it. So in that, we were having a conversation about how her living situation has changed up recently, and timing and our scheduling. We had a nice schedule going, like Thursday through Sunday, Friday through Sunday, like 3 or 4 days together straight, and then a bunch of days off and then back again. And now with, her child rearing, teen rearing situation, it's going to be like every other weekend. So it's changing up quite a bit. And at one point I flat out admit that I I didn't break a sweat. I was just like, how, when it seemed like there was going to be almost not cohabitating, but it was going to change kind of radically or more than I was ready for. One, I voiced it, and as carefully but honestly as I could. But the communication is just so clear between us, and I'm grateful for that. And that's nothing that I ever had before recovery. Pre-recovery would be bottle up everything till it explodes, hold hurts in until resentment. Still, like you're saying though, maintain the we. No, I love you, I care, right? And then inside, I'm like, right? And I have, as you well know, a rage issue I've worked on parallel to the addiction because of my abuse and trauma and all that in the past. So today we're just chilling at VI and talking about like, what is the new schedule again? And let me get this down because we're kind of in like week 1 or 2 of the new thing. And I was like, wait, when do I see you again? What's happening? And we got talking about cohabitation though. It's about moving in. And she was like, I know that's not what you want to do. And I was like, it's not yet. And I said, but look, I shouldn't say, but I should say, and I said, but look, I'm very honest with you about how much I love our time together. I really dig you being with me, whether we are sitting and eating and talking, whether we're napping, whether we're watching a movie, of course, whether we're having sex, because it's fucking amazing. But even just one thing that I've done very differently, Alan, is, I'm regularly like, go. Like I got something, I got writing, I got work, I got school, I got this, I got whatever. Right. And that's something to work on, getting better balance. But let's just say for sake of argument and the 45 minutes we have here, I got a lot of shit going on. I got a lot of plates spinning and I'm trying to organize that better. And so what we've made very clear is that I love you being around and I'm not ready to move in fully, but you've got like space in my closet and even in the other closet and at the sink and everything and all that. And I love it. And what she's comfortable with, which I'm very lucky. I'm very fucking lucky, is she will come over and she will read, watch TV. If I'm not too caught up, because where I work is still in the like kind of larger TV room in the apartment. And so I can get distracted. And that seems unfair, but also I'm like, yeah, this is my spot. This is my work spot. But she's very amenable and we've talked it out, and I even double checked a couple of times, like, are you really good over there chilling? Because I've had experiences in my past where frankly, someone says it and is in the we mindset. Oh, it's fine. Right. And then 4 weeks later, it blows up in your fucking face, like, Martian Manhunter with a bomb from Bugs Bunny. And I'm like, you're like, what the fuck just happened? Why are you so upset right now? Right. And I've also been that person. I've been on both sides of that blow up. But no, it's awesome that we can chill. And how I joke when you and I write, or you and Tony and I have our writing meetings, I'm like, hey, let's go to Flying Star and sit across the table from each other and not talk. Right. And we do anyway. We bullshit for a good hour sometimes before we get into writing. But it's similar to that. I'm like, come over because I just love your presence. Right. I really am getting, I'll be frank, I'm really getting used to not just being on my own. And while I still like my solo time and my writing time and really concentrating, when I go to bed, I told her, I said, when I go to bed, when you're not here, I'm like, oh, right. I'm like, oh, I'm in my bed alone tonight or whatever. But I still do need that time to sit here, work on my laptop. And I love that you're 10, 15, 20 feet over there and you're cool with that. Right. And so that just took talking that all out. And I don't mean to make it sound like laborious. It wasn't, but I'm sure I was pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. And yet at the same time, ready, like you with your guy going, you know what, no, thanks. That was weird. And I'm out. I knew I had to say these things and get clarity on how does that make you feel? And I'm not rejecting you, but what does it fit, and let's get into like more than just, surface level. Like, tell me if it's weird or not. And, let's be sure that we're not saying the things to cover or be codependent or be people pleasing like I used to do. And she's probably admitted to as much in her past experiences. and we're both middle-aged, like you're saying, we've got some water under the bridge. So it's like, let's be adults and talk this shit out. It ain't easy,
Right.
but God damn, it's better than the alternative.
Well, that's it exactly. And I loved how you just put that. We all have water under the bridge. That's it. I mean, I don't like to view it as baggage because that to me just, it implies, all of this, that we're bringing all this drama with us, and some people might be, but to me, I just liked how you said that. We have water under the bridge, where it's like, look, I've been down this road before, and I think that we have to be able to express and say, this is where I'm coming from, or this is my history that, I've operated from, and I'm going to try and do it differently. Right. And I look at a relationship I had before where he and I, we were having some issues, and part of it is like, he wasn't a clear communicator, or at least an honest communicator. And when I said I needed some more time to decide whether or not I still wanted to keep going, he was like, well, we've been together long enough that you should decide whether or not you want to be with me or not. And I was like,
was this because he was moved? What sparked this? What was the, I mean, I don't want you to break their identity,
right.
But what more was the context of the conversation? He was moving, or you guys were in a tense period?
So what it was like, he couldn't be vulnerable with me about something that I had pointed out, like, made no sense from the very beginning. I was like, what you're telling me just doesn't seem correct. It doesn't seem correct, and it doesn't seem like you're being honest with me. No, I am. It's this. And I'm like, okay. And so finally I just said, hey, look, I will take care of this for you, because I don't like you living in this problem. So if you need me to take care of it, I'll go take care of it for you. And then,
do you not want to get specific about that? Do you want to protect? Do you not want to get into the nitty gritty?
No.
Okay.
And I said, I will take care of it for you. And then he told me the truth of what it was. And I was like, seriously? That it's nothing. That's nothing, right? It's not a big deal at all. But it was something that he was embarrassed about, something that, him expressing would have been very vulnerable for him. I took it as he's lying to me. Like, we had been going for like a year, and I'd been asking, and he just wasn't being honest with me, right, about it. So
for a year, there's. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, ask.
So for a year, there is some kind of tension that that there's a story behind,
right,
that he is not ready or is unwilling to share more details about, and you as the partner wanted to, the knowledge of which would be more engaged and more open between the two of you?
It was one of those that it was like, it was a problem. And because I would come over and I would say, hey, why can't I go into this one room? I felt like Friends episode where they were like, oh, Monica doesn't ever let anybody open that closet, right? And I'm like,
oh shit.
Okay, so why can't I just it's right there. This is the bedroom. Why can't I go in there? Oh, no. And I'm like, okay. And it was like an excuse every single time. It was just like, and I was like, what you're telling me makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And so when he finally expressed what it was, I was like, this is a problem. Your landlord should have taken care of it. I will take care of it for you. Like, I will call them and take care of it, because I was responding to what he had been telling me, right? He had been telling me this the entire year. And I'm like, I'm done with this not being settled. I'm going to call your landlord and get this shit taken care of. And then he was like, no, I have to tell you the truth. And I was like, So all it made me feel was that like he had been lying to me for the entire year about everything, right?
So really was a lie of omission, let's say that way, because I was wondering why you were framing it as a lie. Um, but he was avoidant to the point that it really wasn't what little he was saying really wasn't the truth at all.
Right.
It was a lie of omission. And then you found out the truth and you're like, dude, I've been going off this other half story you've been telling me this whole time.
Right.
So that's why it was so damaging, you're
right.
saying, to you and the
right.
trust and the intimacy between
the trust, because I was like, how do I believe anything else you've been telling me? You've been telling me that all the other stuff is this. Is any of that true? Which is true and which is not true? Right?
Wow.
I said, so I need some time to think about this. And so it was almost like an ultimatum. And I know that like he told
him giving it or you giving it?
Him giving it to me by saying, we've been together long enough. You should know whether or not you want to be with me. And I said, I need some more time. He's like, then we're done. And I know he's told friends that we have, and he said, oh, I wasn't ready for a mature relationship. Right.
Ooh, and so, I know who this person is. And I'm like, oh my God.
And I was
okay,
like,
anyway,
I don't know how to process that. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how to process that.
It almost seems like it's completely the other way around.
That's
like
how I felt.
He wasn't ready.
Right.
And he's not sharing things, and he's not just doing disclosure of things that seem pretty common.
That's
again, you're not, you're keeping the J.J. Abrams mystery box closed, for sake of privacy, but still something that is in your craw for a year like that, and then for him to, okay, I think I get it. So then he's asking for some kind of commitment, and you're like, yeah, but there's been X, Y, and Z that's been so off and odd.
Right.
And then he goes and says that you're not ready. Okay.
Right. And so it's one of those things that it's like, to me, that when I think of like a we and an us, to me, it's like, on Saturdays, we do this. On Sundays, we do that. And like, I want to be the type of person, and I want to be in a relationship where I want us to build a home together. I want us to go on vacation together, or I want us to do great in our own professions. I want us to fulfill our dreams and support each other in that, right? So it's like a you and I walking together, as opposed to I walk behind you or you walk behind me.
Mm-hmm.
We're walking side by side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, the entire framing of this conversation, your we versus us thing, is really fucking smart. It's really, there's probably a fucking book there, but I know you've got, 8 books that I'm pushing you to write already. So just to make this number 9, what part, just to sort of put a bow on the end of that story with that person that you just shared, what part is your part to own? This is a very 12-step thing, as you know. As far as the we versus us, were you getting into we stuff yourself, or no, you were trying to maintain like a level of trust that then was just kind of ruined for you? Like, is there any we part of that story on your part?
I could have been, that, I'm sure there is, but nothing is coming to mind. Like, nothing is coming to mind. That doesn't mean I did it, that there wasn't something I should own, but there's nothing that comes to mind immediately. Whereas I can think of other relationships where it was like, oh, my part, that shit stank. And it was me. I'm the one that farted, right? Like
you're Jim Carrey and liar. It was
me
in the elevator.
Exactly. There's other relationships and other instances where it's very apparent that it was mine. Right. And right here, it doesn't, other than like, I could have been more allowing another person to be vulnerable and hold that space for them, as opposed to, look, I'm already on a high horse. You should be on a high horse, right?
Oh shit.
So maybe that's it. Maybe
you have standards. What is it that is, when you were talking about, someone is usually emotionally dominant, and even in the conversation that my girlfriend and I were having today, we were talking about who's the alpha, who's this, who's that, and not in a competitive way. We were talking about past relationships, and in my divorce, as I've said before, I think you had two fucking alphas, and that's hard.
Right.
That's fucking hard. Well, especially when one alpha is a raging fucking sex porn addict,
right,
and is lying every other minute,
right,
and then asserting my alphaness to buttress the lies.
Right.
Holy fuck, right? And then it's codependent the next minute and curled up in a corner going, please don't leave. Not easy.
Right.
Not easy, but pity the partners of the addicts. And I want to plug that I do work with the fucking, I'm wide open to co-addicts if they identify that way. It's a little touchy now because people are redefining that if they're using that term at all, because you don't want to victim shame, but there are people who are with that. I mean, people still come to me all the time like, I don't know why I put up with this shit for so long. It's like, well, there is this thing called co-addiction. Or at the same time, just whatever you want to call it. Codependence, co-addiction, it's, enabling, abetting, or turning a blind eye to obvious, shitty, unhealthy, compulsive, addictive behavior. Lies, right? Ignoring lies, ignoring deception, all that shit. But anyway, what is it? Why is it so difficult if you have like someone who's emotionally dominant, or not, but just regardless, why is it so difficult to set boundaries? What is so hard about it? Like, you were talking earlier, like, can you name a specific incident where it changed for you in a relationship where you kind of shared that when that person didn't accept your gift, you were like, that's a bad look.
Yeah.
That's a bad look. And I don't want to do that. But it's what led you to that. I mean, is it all this 12-step? Is it all this therapy? How do people need to know, people want to know, like, where did you get that self-respect? Because I want to, try to
it's
cultivate
that.
Well,
it's all of that. And it's recognizing that you were asking, why is it so hard? Because when that person comes up to your boundary, what are you going to do? Are you going to just roll over and let that boundary be crossed? Or are you going to stand your ground and say, I told you no? And in telling that other person no, are you willing to walk alone? Right? To me, that's like that whole idea of the podcast is like, I'm willing to be single on purpose. Like, I have a boundary set here and you crossed it, and how many times are you going to let that person cross it? Who was it that, was it Maya Angelou that said that we teach people how to treat us? So if you let that person step over your boundaries time and time again, you're telling them you can step on me.
You've now trained them.
To step on you.
Unhealthy.
Yes.
Right.
And what you've said is that not only is this boundary no longer a boundary, but none of my boundaries are boundaries anymore.
We used to say, you're totally right. We used to say in class, this was during the TAT labs. TAT labs were sort of the cohort before this big single on purpose cohort. But one of my clients brought it up, and then we all jumped on it like fucking dog pound. It was such a great idea, was that if you have boundaries made of chalk, get ready for that shit to be erased. Get ready for someone to take the fucking eraser and just obliterate it.
That's it.
Because you allow it. So don't do fucking chalk boundaries, right? We all have to be mutable. We all, have to not wax and wane, but, each situation is individual, is its own situation. But that said, I really like how you're emphatic about, like, motherfucker, this is clear from day one.
Right.
Like, for me, cohabitation is really clear right now.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
And at the same time, I keep reaffirming, maybe because I'm being, I'm alpha, whatever. Sagittarius, fire sign, I'm hyper fucking sensitive. So in a way, I do overcompensate a little bit, going like, are you sure that you know that I know that you know we're good, right? Like I did that a little bit today. So I did have one other spiel with my girlfriend. We did, because I think I just shared this with you, that I have plotted out the next 3 months, because I'm getting into this social work degree. I'm sending out my letters and putting in all the admissions stuff. And we sat. Well, we didn't sit. She was chilling in bed, and I don't know. I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I was like, I just want to make it clear that the next 3 months are going to be kind of like, I really want to get regimented. It doesn't mean that I want to be inflexible, but I want you to know, especially given the short history that we've had, but the really rich history we've had and how we've been communicating well, I want you to know that if I'm in like this work mode on a day when you're particularly sensitive, or you're particularly cuddly, or particularly whatever, I just want you to know, like, this is going to be happening for a couple of months. And at the same time, I'm still going to be human. I still love you around. I want you to be around. I'm not ignoring you because something is changing in our relationship. I want you to know that I have a particular goal now, like 11 weeks. I don't know if I texted you or not. I thought I reached out to you or some others, but the end of May, I want to be out of, I want things to be different than they are now. And I shared the ways how. And she was good with that. And then again, I got a little like, I was like, no, you'll know that it's not because I don't love you, right? And she was like, yes, you don't have to say it like 18 times. But so I get a little insecure at the same time that I'm setting the boundary, or I'm setting the boundary, but I'm just being clear about plans and designs. And, yes, please still come over. And yes, please.
Well, can I ask, when you ask multiple times, are you trying to make that boundary in chalk?
No, you know what I just realized I'm doing, though, that at the minute you asked me, what I'm doing is I'm still playing into a little bit of codependence so what I don't like about my codependence was I was trying to be a mind reader or have them be a mind reader. And where I'm saying X, but I mean Y, and you should fucking know. And so I'm overcompensating for that little bit of me that's still in there and going like, you heard what I said, right? Now, you know what? Now don't be hurt. It's like I'm preempting, a day where she is like, maybe one day she's like, oh God, like you're working so much. I'm preempting like the conflict already. At the same time that I'm feeling good about, like, I'm setting up the schedule for us and the boundaries, and this is what life is going to be like. It's going to shift a little bit for the next couple of weeks. So isn't that interesting? We're talking about that right now. It's like I set this, and then the insecurities are still there working on me in real time. And
I mean, to me, it sounds like you were answering, why is it so hard to set boundaries?
Boom. You just dropped the mic. Yeah. Right. Right. Because I want to assert my boundaries, but I don't want to hurt the person. And when it's not my control over whether or not they get hurt, I can just assert something, whether it's a boundary or whether it's a plan, or a deadline. And then I'm still like, oh, I hope that doesn't hurt. And that's, if it's coming from compassion, that's one thing, but there's still a little code up there. There's a little, like, there's insecurity there. Like, can you handle this news that I'm giving you? It would have been funny if she would have been like, dude, I calm down. I got it. Like, it's good. Stop saying that. I'm fine, you're fine, and I'm fine, that you're fine. It's fine. Just stop. Let's go have breakfast, jackass. Let's go to Village Inn. You know what? Codependence, what I do now with that is, especially like say with my children, or if it is my ex, if I find myself regressing, and it's almost like back then how one of us had to pick to be the beta, and I would, because I was like shame ridden and guilt ridden and fucked up because of the addiction and everything. What happens now when that shit hits is, if I make a codependent move, if I go into we, or I'm bending too far than I really want to, and not out of a healthy way. Like, I'll make an exception right now. I'll compromise without being compromised. What happens now is I just own it. So if you and I have an agreement, and then I'm like, fuck, I really can't go meet you, Alan. If I do meet you anyway, that's on me. I'm pretty good about
Right,
that.
right.
Despite everything I just said about how insecure I got there at the end of that conversation with my girl today, I will be like, okay, I'm uncomfortable and I'm really thinking about the other things that I was going to do and should, in quotes, do, this obligation I had. But I chose to go ahead and not break my agreement with Alan, which would have had its own consequences. And you would have been like, dude, or whatever your reaction would be. But now I just own it because I go like, okay, that was a codependent thing. I really should have stuck with it. I really would have been better served sticking to that boundary. But now that I haven't, get over it, dude. Like own it, do the thing, and then just learn from that experience. Is how I kind of get through that whole process.
I love it. I love that.
A little bit of a tangent.
No, I love that. Yeah.
I just love this we versus us.
I do too.
I really like the framing that you brought up. Might be a second one in there. You know, we got sequels.
Oh yeah.
We have sequels to all our podcasts, everybody. We've done 3. We already have 6 in the bag. But where can you end us? Where can you walk us out with
I have no wisdom right now. I have more questions. And because that whole idea of boundaries is, there's that fluid nature to it. When you were talking about it with chalk, as well as, not wanting to hurt the other person and then being firm in them. There's so much in there. There's so much in there because it's like, I don't want to have an electric fence, like as a boundary. At the same time, I don't want them to think that they can just walk over them. Right. And you said something about like, I'm trying to remember exactly what the words were, but it was like that it's almost immutable, right? That your boundary has to be fluid, that you can bend, but it doesn't break. So it's almost like you have to be willing to renegotiate your boundaries with that other person if it becomes a problem. But to me, that person, if they haven't changed, if they're like, I'm not going to change, I'm just going to run up against your boundary, that's not showing you any respect. As opposed to like saying, hey, I know that this is what you want, or this is what you need, but this is what I need, right? So how do we make our boundaries come together, as opposed to what are your boundaries? You're supposed to love me.
So we've got, it's supposed to love me. I mean, it's right. So it's like you're saying, it's like your visual. We can probably end on this. This is your whole framework, we versus us. And the visual is walking together, us. I've got my things, you've got yours. And then we have our relationship in the middle together. But it's not this enmeshment. It's not this lack of communication. It's not the resentment that instantly comes up when there's an expectation that no one's fucking communicated or swallowed.
Right.
And so again, that's how, like per you, we set the boundaries so that we can be an us instead of a we. So we're not doing the you complete me thing. We're 100% as opposed to I'm the 15, you're the 15, we're finally whole together. It's a lot of pressure to put on a fucking relationship.
Yes. And to put on another person. Because what that's saying is like, hey, I'm not going to be an adult here. So you have to be an extra big adult to take care of my childish behaviors.
We're almost right. We should end there because we're almost right back to where you were talking about at the beginning. Like you didn't want you're not no sugar daddy. That shit. Thank you as always, man. I really like the framework. I really like the we versus us. I'm telling you, it's a book. Look for it in the stores a year from now, everybody. No, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, thanks as always, Alan Herring the third.
Thank you, Sean
I appreciate you, brother.
I love you too. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
I hope that episode was helpful. Hey, listen, if you want to share your singlehood journey, if you've gone somewhere and come back, if you have revelations and wisdom, please share your story. It's going to help other people. Nothing makes us feel more connected than hearing other people's stories. So just send me the audio of your story, and you could just record it directly from your phone and email it to theangrytherapist@gmail.com. Also, if you want our Single on Purpose newsletter, go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life. You will get tools and articles and other people's stories, and also Zoom links to private gathers. So if you want to join our community, go to singleonpurpose.life. Thank you for listening. Be well. We hope you tell a friend. Hey, before you go, I want to invite you to the Single on Purpose private community online. It's off of social media, no ads, no algorithms. We got forums, we got live groups, we got webinars, and we have social hangs. We also have offline in-person hangs happening soon. So check us out. Go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life, and I will see you inside.